Good morning, campers, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program .25 Hard Mode. This is the fourth episode in the series, and today we have a new objective. We are going to the moon. Moon? Moon. Let's just call it the moon. Seems easier. So first things first, we're spending all that lovely science and money that we unlocked in the last episode on new parts. Fast forwarded significantly because it took me forever to decide what I wanted, though this was recorded live on twitch.tv, so until that video expires, you can always go catch it there if you want to see the uncut version of this. It's pretty boring, though. At least this part, but you can hear my reasoning behind picking each part. Anywho, also checking on our different contracts available, so we want to get as much money as we can possibly get from going to the moon. Moving on now to the building phase. This is also sped up significantly. You can see we're designing our orbiter, the service module, and the crew capsule that we'll be using on this particular journey. This is going to be awfully similar to some designs you might have seen in previous versions of the game, though obviously it's fairly limited based on what parts we have. And we are trying to use some of our mod packs here. Links can be found in the description below if you want to download any of those mod packs for yourself. Just checking out unlocking a couple parts I missed. That's going to come back and help me later using that part. The service module, very important part of the moon spacecraft. This has to effectively get you out to the moon and bring you home safely. It doesn't have to have enough fuel to land, though, because that's what you'll have an entire module just for landing on the moon. Much more fuel efficient to pack the lander separately. A little bit more difficult, though. If you're just beginning with the game, it's probably more efficient to design something that can land on the moon and come all the way back home without having to do any fancy docking maneuvers. But I'm decent at docking maneuvers, so we'll be using that to our advantage here. Slapping on some RCS fuel and power generation capability. And leaving a few empty slots for science experiments. And this is where our fancy lander setup comes in. And we're stowing the lander on here backwards so that the engine shroud drops away when we separate the service module. That'll also line us up to dock much easier. Once we actually separate, all we have to do is scoot out to the side, back up, and then we can just pop right onto the nose of the lander. Though that did create an interesting accident in a test flight we did with this in sandbox mode. That will be getting uploaded separately, so be sure to look for that. Designing the rest of our lander now. This is a model I've used before. Though not with the universal storage mod enabled. It kind of winds up looking like a bacteriophage, but it's very efficient, very good at getting down to the ground. It's a pretty light lander design, so the lower stage actually has enough fuel to get you down and all the way back up, and still has maneuvering fuel as well. Once we unlock the larger lander can, you typically replace the entire upper half of this lander with that. Though in this case, I was trying to design a two-stage lander, something where the base would stay on the moon, because I like leaving that sort of little monument behind. I'm dorky like that. But of course, I used that safe decoupler, so as we will see later, it is a little bit too safe. Still attempting to use some of the new parts in the design, adding some universal storage mods, science experiments, and power generation. I think that should give us a decent lander, though I'm crunching numbers now to determine whether or not we can do better than that set of fuel cans mounted on the roof of the lander. And we're going to go with that instead. that's going to be our final lander design, just adding the legs, and I think we slap a thermometer on there too before we go. No, maybe not. Unless I missed it. Anyway, that is what we have to get into orbit. From there, it can get to the moon, land, and come back safely. I've used that particular design before, so I know it's capable of that. Adding science experiments to the service module now, because, of course, we still have some stuff to do in orbit that we want to be able to get done. Now we get to design the lower stage. What we do not have is we do not have the mainsail or any of the nice big NASA parts that we've gotten in the last few updates, but we do have the skipper, so that's going to be our core module here. And I get lazy and we're just going to slap 3 or 4 copies of that central module onto the side and use those as boosters. It gets expensive, but it does the job pretty well. Using liquid-fueled boosters, it allows you to feed fuel from the boosters into the main stage, so when you do drop the boosters, you still have a fully fueled rocket in the middle. Well, you still get the advantage of having that extra engine in the lower atmosphere. Very, very useful. There was a brief cut there, but you will see what happened in the deleted scene that's going to get uploaded at some point. But we are switching it from 3 boosters to 4. Aerodynamic control fins, of course, very important when you have this much rocket to maneuver, because as good as the reaction wheels in the command pod are, they're not good enough to maneuver something this large. We are using asparagus staging, a modified version of asparagus staging, where we're going to feed those 2 side boosters into the middle, and then the 2 front and back boosters into the side boosters, so that we'll drop the 2 front and back boosters first, and then continue upwards on just the 2 side boosters in the central core, and we'll drop the 2 side boosters, and by then we'll hopefully be most of the way to orbit, and that'll leave the fully fueled central core to get us up into orbit and partway to the moon. Just making sure our staging is all set now. Trying to set an action group for the safety couplers, but they don't work with action groups, or anything for that matter. Adding RCS to the service module. And we're going to add some separation motors to the boosters to prevent the accident that cost us Bill Kerman. Yeah, that was Bill that passed away when his rocket ran out of fuel because the boosters destroyed half of it. So those will forcibly launch the boosters away from the rocket and hopefully keep them from crashing into anything. Well, anything important. Tweaking the staging a little bit more. And that's going to be our final design. So here we are. Alright, our crew for this launch is Hudbald, Bob, and Ladaus. Ladaus. 3, 2, 1, and good looking launch. Again, fast forwarding to save a little bit of time. This episode, as it was recorded, was about 3.5 hours long, and I managed to cut it down to an hour and then split that into 2 episodes. So here we go, burning through our first set of boosters here. You'll see once we jettison them that all the rest of the boosters will still be full of fuel. Here we go. Beautiful. So proud of that. They're just so graceful as it dropped away from the rocket. Still climbing through 8,000 now, with 3 boosters still going. Well, 2 boosters and the central core. Beginning the gravity turn, still got those 2 boosters attached. Very, very graceful looking design. Though looks a little bit weird with that. Oh, and you see the boosters collided after they jettisoned from the rocket. That was a little bit frightening when I heard that explosion. And yeah, the rocket looks a little bit odd with the lander just kind of bolted into the middle there. I'd like to cover that up, but I don't have any fairing mods attached, and the fairings that let you do that tend to be later in the tech tree. But we might add KW rocketry later, but probably not, because I always feel like those are easy mode parts, essentially. I wind up using nothing but KW parts when I'm launching. Also, they don't seem to be as solid as the stock parts anymore. Getting into orbit now. Just finished. There we are. Good. We've got the orbital insertion burn is complete. Going to set up a maneuver node to get us to the moon. Though, as you can see, fuel level is pretty low in our first stage of the rocket, so that's probably not going to get us all the way out there. It'll give us a good boost, though, and then we'll wind up leaving it in orbit. Space junk. Again, we're not doing so great with the Kessler syndrome in this particular save file, but fingers crossed that doesn't come back to bite us later. So far it hasn't, but I haven't recorded the episode after the moon mission yet. Time warping around the planet. And you still got future me for a little bit longer here. I will send you back to the live commentary once the lunar insertion burn is done. Well, partially done. We do a pretty neat maneuver after the burn that you'll definitely want to see. Maybe. I don't know. Probably not. Here we go. And back to past me. Yep. Okay. That was it. And let's stage. Pull away from that booster. And we are going to rotate. Sorry, want to rotate this way. Alright, so we just need to pick up the lander. And docked. Okay, so we are controlling from here. Going to make sure we are not stealing fuel out of the lander. Let's rotate and go ahead and see how far past our maneuver we are. Yeah, pretty out of whack. Let's go ahead and set up a new maneuver for next orbit. That will be our maneuver next orbit. So we're going to set the alarm, time warp around the planet, and head for the moon. I think that's... oh, a little too good there. Let's back off just a tiny bit. We're using our RCS jets to undo that maneuver ever so slightly so we pass above the moon rather than through it. Because the last thing you want to do is crash instead of passing the moon. And look, we still got half of our fuel in our service module here. Make sure I didn't take any from there. Or there. All set. So now that we're on the way to the moon, I need to figure something out. So let's EVA. How's this work? Do I have to manually do it with a Kerbal? I don't know. How does this work? Alright. Let's get back into the ship and see if I can figure that out from inside. I should really not have used a part that I don't understand, but fingers crossed it won't come back to bite us. Burn there. Nice and low because I'm not going to be able to rely on the decoupler whatsoever. I can't believe I screwed that up. I'm using a part, I had no idea how it worked, and I just can't find anything on it whatsoever. So, for trying to figure out what I'm doing here, this decoupler is from a mod pack, and I don't have the slightest idea how it works. There's no right-click menu coming up. There doesn't seem to be any... unless there's something in here that does it, which I don't see. Maybe there's a button, keyboard button, that I don't know of. Just got no clue whatsoever. Let's do our crew report. Already did. Auto propellant. Auto propellant. Science Junior. Wait, have we used a Science Junior here? Apparently. It's our fuel cell. Mystery goo. Auto propellant. Magnetometer. Let's extend that. Magic Mary Poppins magnetometer. Log data. Woo! Keep. Alright, EVA. Alright, so that should let me use that again once we're closer to the moon. Set an alarm. Let's go ahead and retract that. So we're just about to hit our maneuver node here. Going to start it at just after 15 seconds from the node in countdown here. That should put us in a pretty good orbit, I think. You know, be about 20,000 by 20,000. And kill. Alright, what are we looking at? We have 18 by 21. That is good enough for me. Nice, fairly flat orbit. I think our target's probably going to be this nice big crater on the day side of the moon. No reason to overcomplicate things for our first trip down. Ideally, I think we want to land maybe somewhere in here. This looks like a flatter part of the crater. We don't want to land over here. So I think we're going to go around this. Yeah. Let's go ahead and transfer. Let's take Hudbald down. He seems a reliable Kerbal. Cue the lights. Okay, so our lander is crewed. And it has crew in it. Let's go ahead and do some more experiments now that we're near the moon. Let's get the magnetometer back out. That is from the D-Magic mod. That gives you a bunch of extra science experiments. Was listening to Constructed Resources. It's a Magic the Gathering podcast. Gets a little weird with the sign-offs. Excellent data. Let's go ahead and toggle that. We are going to send Bob on EVA to get that information. So we want to keep the science data stowed up in the command pod, just in case we lose that when we hit the water. Because it doesn't look like we're going to be able to disconnect the service module, so chances are that's everything is going to get destroyed when we splash down. Hopefully not the crew pod. But they're pretty, they've got pretty high impact tolerances, so I think we'll be okay. If you can kind of tell from the design of the lander, but originally this part was supposed to separate and return to orbit and leave the legs behind. But I don't think we're going to be able to separate the, yeah, it's not looking like we're going to be able to separate our base unit here. We'll try, but again, be kind of weird. What other experiments can I do up here? Have we done a materials bay in orbit? No, we have not. Let's keep that. We'll just leave that open so I remember to grab it later. Have we done goo? That's the wrong one. That's the fuel cell. That's the magnetometer. Where's the goo? Where is the goo? Where is it? It's in the fuel cell. Storage. Did I not put goo on this one? I apparently did not put goo on this one. Whoops. That's okay, I think we have a goo on here. Yeah. Observe. Pretty sure I did this experiment in orbit already. Yeah, so let's just reset that. About to have the exciting part of our mission come up here. And this is hard mode, so I get no rewinds, no saves, no quick reloads, nothing. It's just whatever happens, happens. So let's decouple. switch over to this spacecraft. And first things first, we are going to turn on materials bay. We're going to activate our fuel cell. So we have approximately 1 day of power, which presumably will be more than we need. Obviously we are controlling from here, right? Yes. Make sure we're in heads down. Ish. That is the right control from here. Yeah, okay. And we are going to bring this out of orbit now. I forgot to turn the engine on. Well, that was quick. So now we'll just be landing this by eyesight. Here. And I think now's a good time to begin the burn. Aiming for kind of this patch here, I think. Engine more than capable of getting us down to the surface, I believe. We've used a quarter of the fuel and we're already on final approach to the surface. Even on pretty much minimal throttle, this is still slowing us down somewhat. Should have landed closer to the day-night terminator, would have given me a better shadow to use. As is, our shadow's going to be pretty much straight below us, because it's pretty much midday on this part of the moon. Empty of fuel, no sign of my shadow. Getting a little nervous, the ground looks like it's coming up awfully quick. 20 meters per second. Almost completely vertical now. 15 meters per second.